This around. And we are live. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to, hold on a second, welcome to the, okay, can't do LinkedIn. Welcome, everybody. Afternoon. It started raining again, so there's no tennis for me this afternoon. It's probably raining in Glasgow too, Ramsey, is it?
Bright and sunny.
Bright and sunny, really. This is my good friend and colleague, Ramsey Sloss. Ramsey's based in Glasgow, and he tells me he's just about to open up a clinic in Edinburgh. So busy as ever, Ramsey.
Kept going, yeah. Full time. Well, not quite full time. 3 days a week, so that's enough.
Yeah,
that's enough for now.
What do you do the rest of the week?
Relax. Do a bit of training. Do a bit of running.
I was going to say,
four dogs.
You still doing a bit of running?
Still doing a bit of running, yeah. And I've got 4 dogs, so they keep me busy, you know, keep me active.
Well, I mean, when you still do a bit of, when you say a bit of running, I mean you've represented Great Britain in sprinting, haven't you?
Yeah, you maybe see the shirt in the background there. Yeah, I competed the Masters running since I was 50, so that's what 67 now, so 15 years. Aye, so you find out you're not bad at something, you might as well stick at it. That's my advice.
And and what? So you won at the World Championships, didn't you?
3 European gold medals in the relay, and that's world silver medal in the relay squad. So no individual ones, not that good, but I mean, it's not easy to pick up medals the older you get, you know. But there you go, still doing it.
And still competing.
Still competing, yeah. Well, all the tournaments now have been cancelled because of the COVID, so it's been put in the back burner. So it might be a year before these things start up again, you know. But I'm 67 now, so I think that's 68. So
talking to some people, I think, you know, this enforced layoff, and I'm sure you've had that with your athletes that you work with. This enforced layoff has been really good, because you can never get them to stop running or stop competing. Everybody's always playing the niggle. So, I mean, certainly talking with Tom Novella and his ballet dancers and Pat Ruddy with the Irish dancers. I mean, this enforced layoff has really given people a chance to really, you know, decrease the load, take some time to properly rehab and get things right.
Mm-hmm. On the other side, that's true, but there's a lot of folk who actually taken up some activity. I mean, you couldn't probably buy a bike in Glasgow now. I mean, the bikes are almost sold out. Everybody's out cycling, so people pick up niggles and injuries from cycling, maybe taking up some jogging and things like that. But,
yeah, it's been a great time. I think when everybody's in the healthcare business, I don't think people realise that yeah, you look out the window, as you say, and everybody's out exercising and running and biking. And, you know, and guess what? They're getting problems. I mean, me sitting like this, the neck issue, and you know, that repetitive strain type of thing. And it's been, yeah, if you don't see this as a golden opportunity for healthcare businesses, then you know, what are you waiting for? Everybody wants to get fitter and healthier and more active. Mm-hmm. So it should be a glorious time for us all.
It should be. Yeah,
you are building a new business in this type of thing, where you know some clinics are retracting. Other clinics have seen this as an opportunity to expand. So tell me, Ramsey, you qualified in school in Glasgow.
Yeah, 1975, chiropodist.
Yes.
There was no really any podiatry at that time. It was chiropody. So 1975, it was a time of some chiropodists were doing minor surgery down in the south coast of England, and the main focus then was to progress in profession. And one way was to become a podiatry surgeon. So I did a little bit of training down south, but it was going to take so long, cost a fortune, and you know what? This thing called biomechanics came along at the same time, and I thought, you know, what's this biomechanics all about? And read a bit about it, went a couple of courses, and thought, I think I'd rather learn how this thing called the foot works before I start cutting it open. So that's how I got into biomechanics. The rest is history.
And what was the biomechanics training like in Glasgow then? I mean, that was obviously, it was pretty route orientated.
It wasn't even route. I mean, in 1975, there was no biomechanics along the lines of route, Weeder Ryan or anything like that. It was basically first ray stability, tripod, the foot is tripod of stability, first, fifth metatarsal head and the heel. That was your tripod of stability. And foot rolls in a little bit, and you put a contralateral wedge on, one in the heel, one in the forefoot, a medial wedge and a lateral wedge on the outside, and that fixes everything. So once biomechanics came along with Americans, it sort of opened up a whole new gamut of how this thing called the foot works, and it snowballed.
Sorry about the noise outside. The guys have decided to dig up the street this morning and put in new curbing. So if there's a bit of noise, and yeah, I mean, old orthotics. I remember seeing some of the very old first orthotics, like those, like leather with steel shanks, but they used to have a little pin or a little nib on the inside, so when your foot pronated onto it, it would dig into you, so you'd soup into it.
Offload it, yeah. Things have moved on, become a bit better since then, obviously, you know. Not better since then. More and research.
How has your biomechanics sort of progressed and changed then over the years? I'm sure you're like different evolutions of how you're treating patients and working with patients over time.
Yeah, I think what influenced me most and made me go on courses and do things was I tried to look outside the profession, podiatry profession. I went on a course on muscle activation by a physio back in 2011-12, and that just blew my mind away about how muscle function extrinsic to the foot can affect the foot. And also you've interviewed Gary Ward, who's written the book What the Foot and Process. So these people do you
subscribe to the Gary theory that joints act and they give muscles something to do rather than we're trained that muscles move the joints?
Well, muscles will move.
I think a lot of
he's got a point here that joints do react. Joints act and muscles react. Joints act to the forces applied to them. The forces applied to them and muscles react to that, but the joint might react to a muscle force of weight bearing. So actually it's a muscle that's moving the joint and then vice versa, you know. So his flow motion model, I've not really got into in a big way. I've not finished his book yet, but I might do his online course and get a grip on that. But it's pretty difficult to get it.
I did his practical course about 5 maybe years ago now, and completely. I mean, I was aware of it, and I think if you've looked at some of my things in the past, I mean, this journey started with Howard Dannenberg, or even before, back in the mid-90s, when he was all about arm swing and sagittal plane and coronal rotation and things. And I told you, it took me 15, 20 years to find Gary. He's the only one who could fix it. Nobody else could fix all this bullshit. You know, I was jumping up and down banks and doing all realignment and core stuff, and he's got the fix. You know, and especially
he's not his qualifications. The guy started off as a boot fitter in Europe, fitting ski boots and putting things in ski boots. He's not a podiatrist. He's not a physiotherapist, but he's got a knowledge base of how things work biomechanically and applied it. You can't knock that, you know.
That's why a lot of colleagues were a little bit worried when he came out with the book What the Foot. They were like, he's got the MSc. He's what? Who is he? He's got no qualifications. Tell you what, mate, he knows more biomechanics than you do. I mean, they're in the scapular, thoracic, lumbar. I mean, you know, forget about the STJ. You know, there's a whole load of other mechanics going on there, a whole load, and completely integrated. And I mean, you're very into sort of TMJ and postural things. You know, when I do my anatomy in motion, you can see my nose is slightly over to one side, and you know my jaw's not aligned. Old rugby injuries. And when I do my anatomy in motion exercises, I have to bring this chin across, you know, to rebalance everything and integrate the whole system. Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. Probably would have taken me constantly working at it, maybe looking at it maybe a year or more to fully get it integrated. So I just sort of short-circuited that and got other practitioners who were more experienced in to work with. Yeah, it's a fantastic way of working.
That was a big influence on how I looked at patients biomechanically and added to the assessment, basically. So rather than just look at them posturally and say, yeah, your shoulders are level, your pelvis is level, this is level and that's level. There's other things you need to look at sometimes in that, the level of the eyes, the level of the ears, how the maxilla moves, how the mandible moves, etc. And do you have any descending problems from head, neck and jaw and teeth, and how the teeth meet? Because that can drive postural problems down the way. And if you're working as a podiatrist from a foot up the way, you're creating a torque on the body. Whether you like it or not with an orthotic, you're creating a torque. So if somebody's working at the other end and creating a torque and they're not favourable, you'll get, like bringing out a towel, you'll get stress at the right in the middle, which is usually L5S1, you'll cause problems. And there's patients who come back from getting orthotic therapy for plantar fasciitis, Achilles problems, and you say to them, how's your foot? Oh, it's a lot better now. I'm getting a wee bit of pain in my jaw, my neck, or, oh, have you seen the physio about that? Because, you know, I'm a podiatrist, I don't do necks and jaws. But actually, it was the orthotic maybe influenced it, and you didn't know you did it, but it's just how much you need to know to get a good result without causing a problem somewhere else. That's the key thing, you know. That's the key thing.
Always the thing. It's always, well, that's it. Is it from bottom to top or top to bottom? And you know, where do you start along that chain? Yeah, I like that all ring out type of thing. Is an interesting way to look at things, and especially now with, I mean, well, we're old enough to have worked with dentists before who just like, well, they just pulled it out and threw it on the floor and that was it. Now we're into the world of 3D printed teeth and implants and all sorts of jaw realignment things. I mean, it's you know, dentists have certainly taken that and run with it, as it were. And so, do you think a lot of dentists are sort of aware of that? Because I know, talking to my dental mate, I haven't a clue. Even the ones who are doing
right. Certainly, when 2009, when I produced that paper on the foot about the foot orthosis and dental appliances, I've been working with the dentist for best part of what, 10 years nearly. So co-managing patients with postural problems, TMJ problems, ankle problems. So they would send the patient to me to get foot orthotics. They would get foot orthotics, then they would get assessed by the dentist. They would check their bite pattern and check their muscle power, etc., and you would tweak the orthotic, because sometimes in these patients you change a 2-degree post to a 4-degree post or vice versa, and they just make them so much worse or so much better. So it's really getting a handle on the whole thing from top to bottom and being able to recognise how to look for certain things dentally, what questions to ask, and not to be diagnosed. You're not making a diagnosis. You're making an observation that this patient has, for example, TMJ clicking or unequal opening and closing or unsmooth path of closure, neck pain, and sending that to the dentist and say, I'm not prepared to make an orthotic for this lady because she's got a descending problem. Can you check and see? So they'll check that, check the descending problem and say, yeah, she needs orthotics, but you know what? She doesn't need them right now. She needs them once we get this stabilized. Or sometimes you'll get a patient sent to you by the chiropractor or the physio. This patient's got plantar fasciitis, needs some rear foot control, forefoot control, so that we can get pelvis stable, because the physios and the chiros can't get good spinal coupling, so they can't get the shoulders level. Once we get the foot sorted out, and then the pelvis sorted out, working our way up the chain, once we get the shoulders level, the dentist can go in there and start doing stuff and start building this level, because that's what's driving the problem just now. So
the question from Jody Gordon, who says, do you think as podiatrists we focus too much on the lower limb and biomechanics? A lot of us are worried about working out of scope when looking at the body as a whole. Really? You know, Tom Novella said we had a champagne party in that 76 when he discovered that the foot was connected to the rest of the body.
I mean, we're supposed to be holistic practitioners. I mean, you can be as holistic as you want to be. You can be as holistic. You can stop at the level of the shoulder and say, you know what, I don't go any further than that. If you get a problem with your jaw or your neck or something after 3 months of wearing orthotics, don't come back and see me because I'm a podiatrist. You know, I would say you go and see a therapist anyway, but you might need the problems tweaking that orthotic, not getting your jaw sorted or whatever. Okay, so occasionally you run into problems, but it's getting a team round about you, Justin, who are singing from the same hymn sheet. Luckily, I had 2 dentists, a chiropractor, and a physio, and we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. Because some of these patients would go to their own dentist, you'd get them sorted, you'd get their bite and occlusion sorted, TMJ working fine, everything's great, orthotics. Same to their own dentist, they get one wee filling done, blows them out of the water, gone. All that works. But also it's a difficult patient group to deal with, because many times you'll get somebody in who says, you know, I've had dentistry, I've had implants, I've had restorative work, I've had orthodontics done for, cost me £5,000, whatever. I've had physiotherapy for weeks and months. I've had orthotics, here's my bag full of them. And you say, and you want me to go and see somebody who's going to fix my teeth? So that's why you've got to have everybody on board and who understands what everybody else is doing. Because I mean, instances, certainly not in this country, but I know there was an instance, I think it was in Australia, where you had I would say a foot person making orthotic for a patient, and somebody, a bodywork at chiro or physio working in the middle, and an orthodontist was doing work to realign the jaw. None of them knew what everybody else was doing, and ended up patient blew a disc, L5-1 exploded.
Really?
I've not had anything like that. I've had a couple of scary moments when we was going through the learning process early days, but like most things in medicine or professions, I like to mention, you learn as you go. You learn by what somebody said. Try not learn by your mistakes. Try and learn by other people's mistakes, right? So you learn as you go. And
our colleague Sean Savage in Belfast says hello.
Oh, I remember Sean. Yeah, we got together back in 2007. We were in a relay race in the States. Yeah, Sean's doing well. Yeah, good lad.
And well, I met you in when I met you personally was in Sligo back 3 years ago now. So that was a good Firefly conference in Sligo. But I mean, I'd seen your research from before that, and yeah, I mean the whole work that you did with the RS scan system and looking at postural sway, and I mean the results of that were pretty sort of fascinating, weren't they?
They were, as some people might say, you know, the statistics from it, they weren't revealing too much, but basically you can have not a great deal of statistical significance, but clinical significance is unbelievable. You've got 7 patients who basically, Justin, you couldn't pay enough money to remove either dental appliances or foot orthotics, you know, because the effect of both together for those patients was amazing. So there's not a lot you can read into the stats. It made some differences to postural sway in terms of how far they swayed away from their centre. And, you know, they certainly made some changes, but
of course, there hasn't been really much research by podiatrists in that sort of field when you started.
No, it was a one-off as far as I was aware. We did a lit search obviously before we wrote the paper, but there was nobody who had ever looked at changes in postural sway with dental appliances and foot orthotics. It just hadn't been done before, because as one of the dental journals said when we tried to get it published in there, but feet and teeth, are you nuts? That was more or less the reaction. I wanted it published in a dental journal originally because it'll have more effect in there, but we ended up having to put it in the foot.
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to open up a foot and dental clinic. Of course, you've got to call it foot and mouth.
Foot and mouth.
That's the one.
Yeah.
We've trademarked it.
It's finding.
I've got a couple of good mates who are dentists, and I was talking to my friend Tony. Hi, Tony in Navan. What's it called? Abbey Dental in Navan. There you go, Boot. There's a plug for you. I talked to him about this stuff 2-3 years ago, and he's like, "What have you been smoking?" He has no idea. The implants.
Yeah, I mean, you can. Yeah, for example. I mean, there are. For leg length difference, for example, you can change somebody's leg length by changing their occlusion. There's a way of doing that. So if somebody comes in with I've got a
leg length. Are you? I mean, do you see many true leg length discrepancies? I mean, there's a lot of. Is it a moment it's rotated, or is it the pelvic or the SI joint and stuff? What's going on?
Well, I would go through the basic checks. If they're displaying symptoms of, I think you've maybe got a descending problem from your TMJ. I'll alter the bite. So it involves putting a couple of dental rolls into the mouth. They put the dental rolls into the mouth, bite, not hard down them, but just close down on them. Go and get them to walk out in the corner.
A little ball of cotton wool.
Yeah, get them to walk out in the corner, bring them back in, leg length's gone. Take the dental rolls out, get them all come around the corner, it's back. Right. It's a descending proprioceptive functional leg length discrepancy. It's not something you're going to fix with a heel lift inside the shoe. In fact, you could probably maybe make it worse, you know. So I look at the descending issues if they're there, and then you look at things like doing your Gile test and your SI joint checks and see is the SI joint jammed or whatever. So it comes then maybe it's a physio or chiropractic type issue. Go and get that fixed because.
Have you ever put bite? Look at the bite paper inside and stuff, and look at that. When I went to France and trained the CDAS, they brought us to one of the Olympic Games in Lyon, and that was back in 2008. No, 2000, and they were, they had the Olympic guys and the football teams coming in and putting bite plates in, running them around the pitch, and then analysing their bite, and then making orthotics on the back of that. I mean, that was
what we used to do with the dentist was. I'd maybe go to the dentist surgery. Patient would turn up, fit the orthotics to them. At that time, we were using vector orthotics because they were so easy to snap on, snap off. Wedges, etc. Yeah, so for that application, great. So we would change the prescription. The dentist would then sit them in a chair, check their bite with wax paper, make adjustments to the teeth, maybe change the prescription on the orthotic, or get them to stand or walk and then do a bite assessment, because the bite assessment can change when you're erect from when you're sitting down. And they'll do things like kinesiology, muscle testing to see the effectiveness of it, you know. So it's tweaking and changing, because sometimes these patients, it's just a little bit you need to tweak and change to make them better. But you don't really know.
I mean, certainly within the jaw, I mean, you're talking a millimetre or two of change on either side, aren't you? I mean, it can make a whole
even less than that. It's like saying to a dentist, what's a lot of dentistine to grind off a tooth or put on to make a build up? It's the same as saying to a chiropodist, what's a lot of callus to take off? Once you've done it a few hundred times, you just bloody well know, right? That's your answer. It's clinical experience. You just get on and you do it, but you find out as you go along, you know. You can't really quantify it as such. You just need to experiment with it, and that's how we did it. And it worked well. It worked well.
And then what did that research go on then to anything sort of further, or did you sort of move on to something else then after that?
Well, basically what happened, the chiropractor who was part of the team has moved down. She's down in York now, so she's disappeared off the scene. One of the dentists has retired, so there's one dentist left. So occasionally I get referrals in from dentists, from that dentist, with patients got plantar fasciitis or Achilles tendonitis, needs an orthotic or whatever. So I'll do my observations, and maybe if I'm got any doubt, I'll email them back and say, look, this patient's displaying some problems at TMJ, occlusal issues, etc. And they'll either come back to you and say, look, that's okay, you can go ahead and make the orthotic. It's not a major descending problem. So I go with what they tell me, because I'm not a craniomandibular therapist or a dentist. I'm not trying to be. I'm just making observations and saying, look, here's a checklist. I've seen this patient. She's got all these things that I've identified that I think may be conflicting with an orthotic I'm going to put in her shoes. Do you agree or not? And get something back in writing from. Cover yourself, because it's sure as hell, if something goes wrong, you want to make sure you're not the only person's name on that case note. Somebody else is involved in it. So it's working as a team, and it's getting that team, because a lot of dentists you say go, crazy, that's absolutely nuts. What's that got to do with the feet, you know? But,
and all the research, you use the RS scan system to do your postural sway and things, did you?
That RS scan was that was what we had in the NHS at the time. What I've got now is a Footwork Pro pressure plate, so it's AMQ. So it's not got the same capability. It'll measure an ellipse of curvature. It won't give you all the data that the RS scan does, but for me, it's okay.
But a lot of that data you wouldn't be using unless you were doing research as well.
No, it's a research-based tool. Just for a clinical situation, it's okay just to have a footwork pro, and you can stand, you can walk.
The guys at the company who look after RS Scan, it's George there at gateandmotion.co.uk. They have a new system. It's called Tethan. It's looking at dental occlusion, and it just gets applied on the outside of the outside, little sensors here and here, and they're looking at muscle balance and stuff. It's pretty simple, and they're starting to use that with the implant guys and the orthodontists. You know, it's non-invasive, because I think they were sticking in what do you call them, wires in before, EMG wires and stuff, but this is external, fixed to the head. So yeah, anybody wants to do that, George at that.
So it measures muscle activity. It doesn't measure movement.
Do you want to have a look at it?
Yeah.
Here we go. I'll share the screen. I think this is it. Do you see this now? Do you see that picture, Tethan?
Something coming up, maybe.
All right.
Not yet.
A second.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Let me play the video. Here we go. A bit cheesy, but right. So we get the idea.
Yeah. So it's an EMG. It measures muscle activity.
Yeah,
but it doesn't identify which muscles, because they're so close together, as you know, in the jaw. But it gives you muscle activity.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing the dentist would use would be a jaw tracker. So a jaw tracker measures how far you open, how far you close, path of movement, is it going off to the side, that sort of thing. So you can use that with a velocity jaw tracker. Sometimes the dentists use that to see how it's going.
We can be very, very simple. I mean, a simple plumb bulb in clinic. We can start from there, and we don't need to go all fancy EMG stuff. It's just a measure, and having a look at where the shoulder ear position are, and just work your way up and down. It can be very straightforward and simple. I think a lot of things that go too much Bing and do too much pretty pictures, as you say, sometimes it's bullshit baffles brains, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And as you say there, with the you can't measure the individual muscles there. So where are you getting? It's like doing a scan of the lower neck. Is it tib post? Is it the FHL? Is it?
There'll be muscles of opening. There'll be muscles of opening the jaw that aren't active when you're closing the jaw. So sometimes you get, what I understand, muscles of opening are firing on closing. So unless you can identify exactly which muscles doing what, all you've got is an EMG reading. It's not really been specific as to which muscle is active.
I think they're looking at it more to balance up things after they're doing implants and stuff. So that, you want equal muscle activity on either side. I think that's the gig that they were looking at. But sure, George will be able to tell us more. We should get him on someday and have a chat. And it is quite good. And so any more research in the pipeline, or you've done all that?
No, well, not. So I've just taken delivery of the PodoSmart insoles. You heard of them?
Yeah.
PodoSmart.
Yeah.
It's the first insole. It's the first insole I know. What we're going to do with those? Put them in shoes, and you can measure 13 parameters of gait with them. So stride length, cadence, step length, propulsion rate, etc., etc. you can measure that with and without. So you can put it into a shoe with an orthotic and measure what the orthotic is doing. So it's getting you inside the shoe, not so much from a pressure, not as much from a pressure point of view like F-scan or EMED or anything like that. It's from a motion sensor point of view. So there's a microprocessor in the insole with motion sensors, so it measures movement and gives you all that data. And it works by Bluetooth, so you can just put them into the shoe, send the patient out for a walk or a run. They don't need to be in a treadmill, don't need to be in a clinic. It's all stored on the insole, bring them back in, and hopefully if we can get some data from the effectiveness of foot orthosis using PodiSmart insoles, we can maybe get that published, just to give more credence to actually our orthotics doing inside the shoe.
Because have you fiddled around with F-scan before and things?
The F-scan, no, not an in-shoe pressure system, but certainly just use the pressure mat.
I borrowed one for a couple of years. I just got myself more confused with the in-shoe stuff. It was very fiddly, and they needed loads of time.
There's so much variability, and it's going to vary from shoe to shoe and how long you've worn the shoe for and all the rest of it, you know. So at least with the barefoot analysis, you only get so many variables: your floor, the mat, and the weight of the patient. And if you control the speed, there's no many variables. But once you start introducing in-shoe systems, you've got the insole of the shoe, you've got the density of the material, how much pressure it's had, soak and all the rest of it, shear forces. So there's just too much variability, and the cost is obviously prohibitive.
Would you start off with working with patients advising a new pair of shoes then to start with, and then building from there?
Well, no. If anybody needs new shoes, it's usually then they'll need orthopedic footwear, so they can be referred on for that. But if they need the APOS therapy, I'll send them to the clinic in Edinburgh. They do the APOS therapy. They use the Optigate system there, so they walk them in up and down a clinic, maybe about 10, 15 meters, and you get the data from the Optigate systems. That's what they use there. But hopefully with the PodiSmart insole, we're going to get more in-shoe data, get more information as to, okay, what are orthotics doing actually inside the shoe? How are they changing movement patterns inside the shoe? How are they changing propulsive speed during gait? So watch this space. It's going to be a wee while yet before I get all the data together.
Well, of course, with you with sprinting, the mechanics of sprinting, I mean, it's all forefoot, which has always been very difficult mechanically to help patients with, because you haven't got a lot to work with in a spike shoe. So how do you fiddle around with those?
I've got one or two patients who have got, shall we say, very pronated feet, and wear the orthotic in their sprint shoes. I leave it entirely up to them. You don't have to wear this in here because the foot's doing this, that, and the next thing. It's entirely, you go and find out, you go and experiment and find out. And most of them come back and say, you know what, I just wear it inside the shoe because I feel much better with it, you know, inside the sprint shoe. And that's patient's preference, you know. It's like, how do orthotics, I think it was Nick Knight that was on doing somebody was on doing a presentation on how orthotics work, and bottom line, we really don't know because we can't prove it. We haven't got inside the foot to measure kinetics, kinematics, but it changed the kinetics.
I think Martin was saying they're a load modifier.
A load modifier, yeah. I mean, and there's also the psychosocial aspect to it. You know, I've always worn orthotics because, you know what, I was told I always need to wear orthotics, so I always wear orthotics. People get used to something, so there's a psychosocial aspect of it as well, and they're not too happy about taking them out when they are asymptomatic and they're functioning better, you know. So,
but it's like fellas wearing knee braces and sport, or you know, wrist things and things. It's just sometimes it's just a habit that they've got into. But because I mean, a few years ago they started. Was there some type of rigid type of spike shoe that was, you know, I can't remember which Olympics they brought it out for. Were they fiddling around with this shank of shoes and stuff?
Probably
for energy.
A wee bit along the lines of the Nike shoe, the Vaporfly, the one Kipchoge broke the tour barrier in the marathon, you know. And
this was a sprint shoe about 3 or 4 Olympics ago. They were fiddling around with stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure Nike have been playing around with that and trying to modify the shoe, because basically when you're sprinting, the foot is a spring. It's a spring, right? You don't have a heel contact midfoot, you're just on the ground back off it. So the less time you can be on the ground and flying forward is to your benefit. So they make the shoe more springy, if you like, more propulsive. And by stiffening the shank, you can see how that would work.
A little bit stiff, because the more your foot compresses and the more time you spend on the ground, the more the energy is put into the ground, the less you've got to push off with.
Yeah, so your time's reduced, obviously, So, but I've had one or two patients in wearing the new Nike Vaporfly shoe, because you know what? It's they can take 4% off your time. That'll do me. I'll buy that, because people will buy that as a marketing tool to sell the shoe. So they'll buy the shoe because, you know what? This will take 4% off my marathon time, which is great. Now, 4% off a marathon time for a guy who's capable of running 2:05 is not the same for a guy who's running 3:06. You with me? It's not going to make that much
nearly 6 hours, yeah.
And sometimes you put these patients who have been sold a shoe, who are overpronators, and video them on a treadmill, you'll get the shock of your life, because the shoe's so stiff. The shoe will go where the foot wants to go, right? So it'll just completely cave in, and they're amazed at that when you see it in video, because they think, it says here it's going to give me, reduce my time by 4%, yet when the video running it, it's a mess, because their foot's not designed for it. They should never have been sold the shoe in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, it's like my friend Dave, who was a triathlete, and he bought one of those ribbed swimsuits. And he said that he was on the start line scratching his head going, hold on, I've got this underneath my wetsuit. It's maybe not going to work. People want all the little tweaks and tricks, especially triathletes. They're pretty full on. They like all their toys and stuff for their bikes and different things. They all want to be like Lance Armstrong. Maybe like Lance Armstrong, and take 4% off. Improve their aerobic capacity. They can look at their pedal powers and different things. And it's everybody's looking for the little tweak. Everybody's looking for that. Well, it's all about the 1%. Nike have called the 4%.
Yeah.
4%. Don't be running marathons sub 3 hours if I buy a pair of Nike Vapors. Do you?
No, I don't think so. No. I would just go and train. I would just go and train differently,
Yeah, and well, of course, then that is a lot of patients that we see. I mean, of course, in the last few years, there's been the great, park runs and couch to 5K things, and again, those have all been great for podiatry, musculoskeletal businesses, practices. But you think a lot of those, again, it's just, a lot of it's just like, get your shoes on, get out and run. Well, if you've been sitting on your ass, like we talked with Bob Kidd about, we're hunter-gatherers, we're supposed to be out there. If we've been sitting on our ass for 20 years in the office and you're so deconditioned, I mean, a lot of issues that you and I have seen over the years are, I think, they've got as much muscle control as a wet slice of bread. They're just deconditioned. So where do you start with those ones, Ramsey?
You start at the very beginning, and you build up gradually. You start at the beginning. A lot of people start too far up the chain, maybe go out and run with people who are running faster than them or running further than them. So you start at the beginning and build it up gradually. It's like the guy who came in a few weeks ago and was told to lose a bit of weight from his doctor and go out and exercise a bit more, and developed a knee problem. So he went back to see a doctor and said, I've got his knee problem, doctor. How do you get that? I'm not running. What age are you? You're not running. Listen, you told me to go out and exercise. You told me to go out and do it. And you're not providing the feedback for me when I get injured. He wanted to refer to a physio or something like that to try and get rid of his problem and get better. And his doctor just chased him out the door because he's, so it's one thing encouraging people to go out and exercise more. If you're going to do that, provide a backup system where you can fix them when something goes wrong, and this is a big problem. A lot of these things go wrong.
Yeah, especially now with the whole new everybody getting out and active. Yeah, once you get into that 6-8 weeks, all the ligaments and tendons start to give off then, in that repetitive nature of the that part of the sort of cycle. And so again, people need sort of like help to progress through that, or what they can do to sort of cross train around that a little bit.
Yeah, it can work both ways. So you can, somebody who's injured running, can't run, and are going absolutely nuts, you just go and do cycling, go and do swimming. Or I'll tell you what, can you rollerblade? Can you ice skate? I used to ice skate years ago. Go and get down to the ice rink, skate around there for half an hour. That'll get your heart and lungs working. Or go and do the gym, go and do the Go on the treadmill first, then the rowing machine, then the bike, then the cross trainer. Mix it up a little bit. Get your heart rate up. At least when you do get back to running, your heart and lungs won't be in such a state. Your legs will be a bit weaker, but your heart and lungs will be fine. So you recover quicker.
The aerobic fitness will be there. The underlying aerobic fitness.
Yeah,
that's what I don't have. I'm building it up after with my hip. So we're doing a bit of hill walking, a bit of tennis, but it's the aerobic fitness that's keeping me back a little. But it's coming, and well, I think that's also the thing always about seeing a lot of runners. It was always this, oh, well, it's really cheap because all I need is a pair of shoes and away I go. Runners are tight.
They're tight, yeah. I mean, it's true to say.
Are they even tighter?
You just need a pair of shoes, that's all, and just go out and run. It's the simplest thing in the world, but it's getting the right shoe,
Mm-hmm.
So that's the other thing where this PodiaSmart insole comes in, because then we can look inside the shoe of somebody who's running on a treadmill and decipher things that you're not seeing just by looking at a video through a video camera, and try and find them the right shoe. I mean, you go online sometimes, you'll find the shoe companies find the best running shoe for you. Click this box: male, weight, height, and all this. So you go through it, and then they come up with 3 or 4 different shoes, 150 quid. I mean, at the end of the day, the purpose of a shoe, right, for running or walking is what? It's not anti-pronation, it's not anti-supination. It's bloody well protection from the elements. Protection from the elements.
That's all Nike bullshit. Anti-pronation stuff doesn't work. It's all horseshit. Foot does what it wants to do anyway. Yeah, no, there's one in the local sports store in the local town in Dundalk. That's it. You stand on it, male or female, and it tells you what sort of shoe you need.
Yeah.
Of course, there's interesting things coming up with 3D printed orthotics and shoes while you wait in shops as well. That'll be interesting to sort of see. So you can have a footbed 3D printed shoe done while you wait, which should be. And I mean, if you could integrate that with the because again, there's lots of sports stores here using that sort of a sort of bastardized version of the CDAS system to make footbeds and different things. They're doing loads of them. Every time I go into the sports store, there's girls doing another couple of people sitting around going, sometimes you earwig them the conversations.
Yeah,
it's pretty basic. But that's it. So I mean, we do need to be ahead of that level, because if it's in the local sports store and in a year or two, according to Simon Barthold, it's going to be de rigueur to have your orthotic and your shoes printed while you go off for a cup of coffee. Practices need to be up on their game a little bit if we're going to compete with that.
What we've got in Glasgow here, we used to work in a sports store in Glasgow, Grieve Sports in Glasgow, and we were there for about 6-7 years. We moved here, and they do the CDAS things. They do the video assessment. At the end of the day, it's a video assessment by somebody who's not a podiatrist, trained by someone who is clued up on video analysis, etc., and can recognise pronation, etc. Every sports shop worth its salt at least should have one trained podiatrist in store doing video analysis, and that would solve a hell of a lot of problems. So
I was lucky enough with a group of
podiatrists looking for a job. Go to your local sports store, offer your services, see if you can get a job there.
Give yourself away for free. Yeah, and it's the I remember one of the local sports shops ASICS went through about 8-10 years ago doing a lot of training with the sports shops, and I went in a couple of days later and was like, how'd you get on with that ASICS training? And one of the girls was quite honest. She was going, after about the first 45 seconds of the 4-hour morning lecture or talk with the group, she goes, once he mentioned pronation, and about 45 seconds after, I just completely glazed over, she said. And so and now she's flogging shoes because she's been trained by ASICS.
That's a communication problem. If somebody's not a good communicator in terms of what do the staff know about footprint, you tell me what you know about it, and then I'll correct it if you like. Okay. I mean, as Mark Twain said, first of all, establish the facts, then distort them at your pleasure, you know? I mean, you need to go into the sports shops and train the trainers so they know, at least when you're going in here to buy a shoe, you're not just buying a shoe, you're buying a service, you're buying a shoe that's been prescribed for you. Same as you go to an optician and get eyeglasses prescribed by a qualified practitioner, by somebody who's clued up and knows about biomechanics. I mean, you can walk into Tesco's and get a pair of eyeglasses for £6, or go to the optician and pay whatever for them. The thing is, the guys in Tesco can't tell you if you've got a glaucoma, macular degeneration, or whatever. You know, they don't do all the tests. They just say £6 for those glasses. I can see they'll do fine. I'll just take them, but you're not getting the full picture. So I think it's the same with feet and shoes.
Again, that's just the way it's gone. If you say Tesco's or the local, the Sports Direct or something, just get acres and acres of shoes, and there's so much choice. It's difficult to know which one to pick. The one with the nice orange colours on it, I'll have those, please. I mean, there's no real, but the sports shops who do take, or the outdoor shops or the ski shops who take time and actually work with you to get you the best fit. We had loads of patients who used to do. I mean, half of Ireland goes and walks the Camino. Yeah, if you're down in northern Spain, and I mean, everybody was in looking for pre-Camino advice. We used to have like just a sheet blister kit and this and that, and send them off to the local shoe shop or outdoor shoe shop to get decent shoes. They're only walking about 20k a day for 5 days. They're doing the light version. But again, a lot of them would sort of struggle with that because, again, they've been doing nothing for years. So, I know one of the outward bound stores in Dublin, they had a special Camino package for patients. You got your shoes and your blister stuff and your socks and your gaiters and your this and that whole thing for them. Because there's so many people coming in. Every bloody other patient you're talking to is heading off to Spain to do the Camino. So,
some of these things, these temporary things, they will work for some people, right? Your arch supports that you buy, your super feet, your CDAS insoles, they'll work for some people in terms of, you know what, that makes my foot feel better. So I'm quite happy, and I don't see why I need to pay for a functional authority, and that's okay. That's their choice. Nothing wrong with that. So they do work for certain people, but sometimes they don't work, and they can sometimes make problems worse. That's why you need assessed by a qualified practitioner, like
that's where you and I come in. We're trying to figure out. But again, there's that. I mean, and again, it's we're
probably not very good at marketing ourselves well enough, Justin. And
hiding the light under the bushel, Ramsey, is a big problem. People don't like hiding the light under the bushel in the profession, Ramsey, is a big problem. We've been shouting from the rooftops about what we do. Well, that's why I'm trying to do this sort of stuff. And I mean, it's what we can do and change in the life and quality of life of a patient, especially for those patients who have been told, can't figure out what's wrong with you. And it's a simple limb length difference, and they've got a whole sequelae of knee, hip, and back issues. And again, I mean, should we not be more proactive? Because I mean, all like my hip joint, knee joint, SI joint issues, mechanics who heading off to see the surgeon to have the replacement. That's all started off in basic biomechanic misalignment and dysfunction over the years, that repetitive pattern. Imagine you got that, and we're all about the talus. That simple ankle sprain anteriorly shifts the talus, and that whole sequelae of ankle equinus and gait and sagittal-plane misalignment. No wonder your hip needs replaced 30, 40 years later. But if we got that early, would we need to be doing as much? Is there more here an extended scope practitioner in the health service? I mean, the orthopods switched on to this type of thinking?
Certainly where I worked with the surgeon I worked with, he was very switched on to the biomechanics of certain things. You ask your opinion, do you think this patient needs an orthotic? What should we do here? If he can't do a surgical procedure, or he's doubtful about doing it, is there anything you can do with a functional foot orthosis? And I say, I can put a dual density rear foot post on here and a lateral wedge and a dome pad and metatarsal. Okay, go and do it, because he doesn't want to do surgery. So he respects your opinion of what, and vice versa. If he's asking my opinion for something surgically, like I might ask, you might be stuck with a situation and say, right, what do you think we should do here surgically? And say, well, maybe you should do it. What about trying a split anterior tibial transfer and shift it onto the cuboid to create that movement pattern?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's the newer younger surgeons. Sorry, it's the newer younger surgeons. They want to do everything but operate now. You know, because certainly for certain conditions. I'll be talking to my colleague Nick Cullen in a week or two. Hi, Nick. I need to get that all booked. And yeah, it'll be sort of fascinating because, I mean, the surgeries now, I mean, again, there'll be 3D printing bones and replacement taluses and cuboids. That's what they're going to be doing and implanting those.
Right.
And all the biologic stuff that they're doing. It's, you know, orthopedics is certainly changing as well. But yeah, certainly.
They're trained in orthopedics. Podiatrists are trained in. We're specialists, supposedly, of the foot and lower limb. That's what we specialise in. That's what you'll read about. That's what you'll hear about. No, we're not. We're more than that. We specialise in foot mechanics and how it affects the rest of the body, and also how the rest of the body affects the foot. That's what we should be specialists in. The chirodontics thing came about because the chiropractor felt that he learned hee-haw about dental orthopedics at college, at chiropractic college, and the dentists learned very little about craniomandibular mechanics. So it's blending everything together, you know, and you only learn that once postgraduate, once you leave and get out into the big wide world and find out, you know what, there's a hell of a lot more stuff out there. And it's not just foot driven,
But why do you think then that all these people who have just qualified or qualified over the last 5-10 years sit around in male-based groups or on Facebook groups worrying about what the local foot health practitioners charging down the street?
Yeah, I suppose they are, yeah.
What's that about? Why aren't they off to the local sports clubs and running clubs and tennis places and doing all their free stuff and biomechanics? And as you say, it's all postgraduate. And I mean, I know from sitting around, if you just sit around and wait for it to happen, it doesn't. You got to get out there and go do it yourself.
You got to get out there and look for it. Nobody will come and hand you in a plate. You've got to go and look for it, and you've got to look outside the profession, find out what are the Gary Wards doing in this world? What are the Bob Walker chirodontic people doing in this world? How does that affect what I do on a day-to-day basis? How does that impact on it, and how would it change my way of practice so that I can become a more holistic practitioner? So when somebody comes back to see me and says, I've got a bit of pain in my jaw, my neck's sore, my shoulder's sore, rather than say, let's go and see a physio, he'll fix it.
Yeah.
At least you can have some method of examining the patient, find out maybe it's come from your foot, this, and we can check that. So it's just expanding the knowledge base.
From Jody earlier, it's like the question from Jody earlier. I mean, why would we stop at the foot? As you said, we're a full body mechanics. I know from working with the skiers, and I don't know whether you saw the talk I did with Bernard. You know, somebody's using their head to initiate a turn, or you know, and it's not aligned and stuff. I mean, it needs to be fully body integrated, because that's the way the mechanical system works. You know, skiing, running, you know, cycling. I mean, it's you know, whatever you're doing, any type of dancing, it's a full body grade integrated mechanics. Get yourself on that Ward course, Ramsey. It'll really open. Get yourself on that route. Well, you'll be well fit for it. But I mean, you know, it's it's really the pronation and the supination of the wrist as the wrist comes out and turns and things like that as you're walking forward. It's you got to get on that. You got to get on that.
The other guy who's influenced me is a physiotherapist called Douglas Fuel. He does muscle activation, and the only reason they had it in a Tottenham running magazine, muscle activation, is basically how to activate muscles that have been lying latent or not firing as well as you should be. So it's by pressure points on the body, right? Chapman reflex points. I did that in 2011, and his opening statement at the conference was, you know what? We don't know what we don't know. What? We don't know what we don't know. So if that's the case,
again, I saw Hard Dannenberg. I saw Hard Dannenberg doing that back in whenever he was in the UK a couple of times in the 90s. Yeah, you know, activating your tib post, and come up an inch from the muscle, or an inch from the belly button, an inch over the side, in the kinesiology point. Patients look at you like you're completely crazy, but you test it, and I stuck some on there. We had an isokinetic machine when we worked in London and did pre and post muscle activation. Of course, the physios were like, that's not, you've just activated it and tested it, and that's made it strong. And we did it 2 or 3 different ways, and it definitely worked. But patients looking like you, like, I came from a big toe, mate, and you're getting me to rub.
Because I usually say to you, I've been used to going home and doing 3 sets of 10 exercises. Well, say, when will this take effect? Hopefully in the next 10 seconds. It's that instant. You switch it on or you switch it off. And so his opening gamut was, we don't know what we don't know. So we don't know what we don't know as practitioners. What do we need to know to make us better practitioners? You need to go and find out what you don't know, and then start using that as a treatment program, So you started using muscle activation. So patients were getting a bit concerned about, well, why is this podiatrist rubbing my belly button or rubbing my inside my quad and my neck and the back of my neck? It's to try and activate your glutes. And the benefit is, if they know they've got weak glutes because their physio set them in, they've got weak glutes or weak hamstrings, and you activate them, it's like it fires up. It's like instant. It works right away, or it works gradually, but it works.
Yeah, you don't have to sit there for weeks doing clams and any of this rubbish.
6 weeks later, you'll know right away. And that's, if you're doing that for the first time, it's like a bit spooky, because what I think, that's crazy. That's witch doctor stuff, It's not. It's just learning how the body works.
Yeah.
So at 6 months, at the end of it, how the body works was a bit of a shock.
Do you still integrate a lot of that into your normal day-to-day practice?
Yes, you need to be careful of what you're doing. And obviously, with female patients, you need to be very careful what you're doing, and minors. But if you explain it in such a way that they buy into the idea and they put trust in you, it's not an issue, because it's not an issue. And most of these points are around the abdomen, as you say, under the rib cage, down the diaphragm to help the breathing, etc., etc. And I'm not as proficient.
There's quite an intimate one up in through the inguinal ligament somewhere. I can't remember what that one was for, but it would be a little bit iffy. But and do you see many kids? I see a lot of kids. Well, it was all severs and all like that. But of course, a lot of those, the shoe shop says they've got flat feet, or Granny says he's got flat feet, especially this time of year. Well, when the good weather was here, it's gone now for the summer. Kids wearing shorts and they're away with Auntie or Granny for a few days, and the next thing, Mum's like, "Oh my God, Granny said he's got flat feet. He's in toes."
What you say to patients, you have flat feet. That's not a problem in itself. If you say in Bolt's got flat feet, right? He's got a scoliosis. He's a shit coming out the blocks, and he's got 6 foot levers. You tell me what's normal, because I don't know, and I'm not a practitioner. I'm not here to make you normal. I'm here to make you better. Not normal. I don't need to know. We don't need to know what normal is, because we're never going to make people normal. We're just going to make them better at the end of the day.
Well, again, that's back to Tom Novella. That's where it started off with him. In his, he talked about in one of his lectures, and I think that was back in '96, the too good foot. I was like, what? How could it be too good? We were always told things were shit. Now this guy's telling us you're actually good, but you're too good. That was a complete revelation to me in terms of turnout, position, and back. And because we're always told to look for, and that's it. And that's back to the scanners or in the shoe in the foot store. The machine never says you don't need one.
No, you always need one now.
But there were loads of kids in with well, I've been told he needs insoles, and that usual bullshit. Well, I can sell you some. But, I always related it. If it was one of my kids, he wouldn't be getting them because you don't need them. But I'll sell you some anyway.
Sometimes you find out these things innocuously. A kid not that long ago, 10-year-old with Achilles tendonitis, a bit of plantar fasciitis, plays football, plays on AstroTurf 3-4 times a week. So quite common, you're going to pick that up. And taking a clinical history and just observing him. His jaw looked a little bit to one side, and his speech was not, well, I would say, ideal. And then he went a bit pale, a bit white. And I said, "Are you okay, son? You okay?" Well, his mum says, "Oh, that'll be one of his migraines."
Really?
He's 10-year-old. How long has he been having migraines?
Migraines.
5 years. Is that important? Do you need to know that? It's like, did some other checks on him. He's got major descending dental issues. So he was sent away to see the dentist, and also he was treated from a foot point of view, not with orthotics, but with physical therapy, basically, shockwave, massage, and all the rest of it. So he's not getting an orthotic anywhere near him. But sometimes you find out these things innocuously just by interviewing the patient, So
well, you always like interview the mum, or usually with them, or the parents, and they'll go, "Oh, he's paying for a couple of weeks," and the kid like looks at them, and he's like, "I told you about this 18 months ago." The kids are like been hobbling around for a couple of years until it gets to the age where mum's like, "Oh, he's had it a few weeks." The kid's like, "What are you talking about? I told you about this 2 years."
Walk properly for the doctor. Don't walk like that. Walk properly for the doctor. Just get him to do things.
Shoes over the other way. That'll sort it out.
Yeah.
But again, kids are doing a huge amount of sport. I mean, a huge amount. The kids that I see, and I'm sure you see, where they didn't have any downtime. Downtime. Especially the kids who are getting pretty serious once they get into their mid to early teens. I mean, if they're going to county level and different things, huge demands on the system. Too much load. They're shifting too much load, especially at the start of season and things. They'll bring him all. Like it's like my fella Bart. He's 17 now, and I mean he's like ninja fit. When Gaelic training starts, he doesn't need to do the fitness stuff or the plyometrics or all the stuff that the guys got probably planned, because the guys have been sitting around, haven't done anything for 4 months. They need to up their level. So sometimes in the sporting environment, everybody's going to do laps today, and we're all going to do plyometrics. What about the guy who doesn't need to? You're going to load him too much. So there's a lot of that. Again, that's another thing that people can go out and do if they want to spread the biomechanics knowledge, to give away to free to the local football and soccer and Gaelic and hurling and shinty clubs or wherever, and dance classes, because kids get into them.
It's a one type fits all program. You see it in the running magazines. Patients will come in with a running injury, and I'm doing my training, and I'm following this program for a marathon in 12 weeks or 16 weeks, and I'm going along quite nicely, and I've got this injury, and you say, "Well, who's the training program for?" "No, it's for a 3-hour marathon." "No, who's it for?" "Well, I'm following it." I say, "Well, what's your capability? What's your potential for running a 3-hour marathon? Can you do that, do you think, or not?" So they latch onto these programs, and they do it because this is a program to get you to run a marathon in 3 hours or 4 hours, whatever. It's not individualized, okay? And I think that's a big problem with sport, in team sports. Everybody does. We're doing laps at the park tonight. We're doing 6 by 1,000. We're doing this, that, the next thing. And I could see it from the other side of point of view, from a coach's point of view, because I did coaching for several years, athletics. And if you're coaching a group of kids, 20, 30 kids, you can't really individualize everything. You can split them up into small groups, and it becomes very difficult to do it.
Even if they're the same age, say 12 or 13, they're going to be at different levels of skeletal and muscle development and stuff. So it is pretty individualized. But again, some coach. I mean, I'm sure the kids that you coached, with your background, where you were able to integrate it into individually, but a general hold-all coach, and especially, I mean, that's it. Also, then this time of year, a brilliant time of year for loads of business. So come September, because when the things opened up, kids are really sporty anyway. Now there's a tennis camp, a Gaelic camp, a rugby camp, and some other camp, 4 weeks on the bounce. And guess what? Little Johnny's coming in September. Scory's going back to school. Bloody Severs is flared up, or his Osgood Slatters, or some an Achilles. Those are really loading. Oh, I don't think it's got anything to do with 4 weeks of 5 days a week playing football.
I have news for you.
fix them with an orthotic. I'm just going to tell them to unload it.
I know.
Yeah, but of course, again, 40 kids don't want to do nothing. They,
No.
you know, they're literally crawling in through the bloody door because mum hasn't figured it out 18 months before when we could have fixed it. Yeah, I tend to settle them pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think we're going to, as you say, it's going to pick up big time. And a lot of it's just going down to pure and simply overuse.
Guess what? We're in the healthcare business. It's great. I might go back and open a couple of practices. It's so good, but no, I'm not going to.
Have you got many practices? Have you got?
None. Sold them all, Ramsey. Retired.
Yes. All right.
Fluke. Why?
Just recently.
Do you want the real story? No, no. So that was it. Just by pure luck in the end of December. So now I get to do fun stuff like this all day. But I help great clinicians build fantastic businesses now, Ramsey. That's what I do. So, but yeah, no, definitely don't miss all that. You know, no. But yeah, no opportunities now for business. Bloody hell! I mean, it's just stunning. You know, people get off those chat rooms and stop talking about what somebody else is charging £2 less than them down the road. Just get up around, you know, I mean, shoes at this time of year for schools. Well, if the schools are going to reopen, I think it's crazy. About 80% of shoes are sold within the next 2-3 weeks. You know, have you been down the local shoe shop and the local Clark's, giving them a bit of advice for when little Mary comes in with her flat feet or her turned out stuff? Because this is the time of year now. No, it was last week was the time to talk to the shoe shops because most coming in now over the next I can't remember. It's like 80% of shoes are sold within the next 3-4 weeks, just before school. Get your ass down the shoe shops. Talk to them, tell them about the problems that you can help little kids coming in with, and give them some card. There you go. You can have that for free. All those people are wondering where they're going to get new patients from.
Need to be more proactive. We need to be more proactive.
Yeah, we do indeed. Yeah, a lot of people just think it's going to be happening, or you know, I've got the qualification, I'm good to go.
Got all the equipment.
Okay, yeah, it's like the guys who've got the qualification and they're good to go against Mr. Gary Ward and the biomechanics. Okay, we'll see about it. Yeah, and as Gary said, you know, they probably just read the front cover. It wasn't about the foot. Hello.
No. A lot more than that.
You mentioned
I might do his online course.
Sorry?
I might do his online course once I get round to it.
Good.
I've still got some other stuff to do.
He's got loads of videos online, and I mean, he's got a really, really good, and I mean, I think it's 8 years old, a really good 3D hamstring stretch. You know, if you just look up Gary Ward hamstring stretch, it's a 3D, it's unbelievable. And he's got another book coming out.
Is it?
I think, well, not yet, but it's coming. I think that's why he pissed off a lot of podiatrists, because as you talked at the start, back to the 1970s biomechanics, it was the tripod model of the foot. And one colleague next to him, and you probably know who that is. And anyway, he doesn't. I'm not allowed to say what we're going to say, but
he'd be a good lecturer, but I don't think he'd fit into the system, Justin. He'd be a great lecturer, but he wouldn't fit into the system.
But again, it isn't cookie cutter. Well, it is, but again, it's everybody's individual. I mean, you know, if you've broken your wrist in the past and you can't supinate or rotate your wrist, then you're going to have to compensate for that through the other system. So it is, it's pretty amazing. It's also about a lot more about, well, of course, we've got a lot of patients who do a lot of yoga and Pilates now and reformer stuff, and I mean, it's all about feeling the body and integrating the whole body in the system.
They use that a lot in the clinic in Edinburgh, where at balancededinburgh.co.uk, they do a lot of Pilates using the reformers and stuff like that. So they're very big into Pilates.
Well, there's a physio. Sorry, there's a podiatrist. She's just qualified. She's just round the corner from you. A girl called Sarah Jane Wells. She has a Pilates studio in Glasgow,
All right.
West End somewhere. Apparently it's a bit
Right.
fancy, but she's been doing that for 20 years. She's just qualified as podiatrist, and yeah, she'd be very interested in. There'll be a lot of sort of synergy.
Drop her a call. Aye. Go and see her.
And yeah, so yeah, we've covered quite a lot today, Ramsey, haven't we?
Yeah, 40 years. 40 years worth.
well, what's next? What's next? I mean, why? You're probably. I mean, you're like me. I mean, the reason why we're still doing this and still interested and still progressing on is because we still haven't found what's the fix yet. It's out there.
Just keep looking and keep looking. Remember, Schoenhaus, the American podiatrist, saying back in 1980, is the day you think you know everything there is to know about the foot, the day you think you know everything there is to know about the foot and how it functions, only one thing left to do: retire. It's a bad concept to have. You'll never know everything about the foot because we're only looking as podiatrists, foot orientated. You need to look outside the body. Look at the chirodontic stuff. Look at the Gary Ward stuff. See how that applies to what you do as a podiatrist and see how to make it better.
Gary talks about the still misunderstood foot. Yeah, which is quite interesting. And I mean, we're talking with Bob Kidd the other week, or it was just last Friday, with Bob, the prehistoric and the morphology of the bones and the comparison between the stuff. I mean, we're still changing. I mean, one colleague asked about, you know, morphology of bones, would they be affected by barefoot running? And the guy brought the book out in the 90s. I was like, no, we've been barefoot running for millennia, mate. We were away from tigers over the African plains, a 1,000,000+ years ago. We got quite good at it. So that's continuing. That morphology is continuing to change as we develop as well.
Yeah, barefoot running is another thing. I mean, it's one shoe salesman said to me when he was trying to promote the shoe. I wouldn't say which one it was. He said, What's your thoughts on the podiatrist? What's your thoughts on barefoot running? I said, well, same as they are for sex. What? Same as they are for sex. As long as you take precautions, nothing wrong with it. As long as you take precautions. I wasn't too happy, really. Barefoot running. I've three patients come in, fractured metatarsals, beat the A&E, had it every soft tissue thing will go away. Wait or get a CT scan, every report comes back, fractured metatarsals. Stress reaction metatarsals. You put enough stress on anything, it will break. No matter how good the footwear is, no matter how good the technique is, no matter how good the program of activity is, if you put enough stress on it, you'll break it.
Yeah,
and that's what happens.
That's it. I mean, you just go past the physiological envelope that it can cope with, and that's it. Yeah, we used to get that, but I mean, of course, they'd read the book, they'd buy the Vibram shoes, and then go out and run like 10K on their toes. For like 2 or 3 days in a row, and then wonder why they've got why they've got a stress fracture.
Excuse me a second, Justin. Excuse me a second. Hello? 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 Sorry. Open the door. The thing about the barefoot running shoes is people say, it's the way we used to run. Why don't we just revert back to the way we used to run? Well, first of all, some bugger's gone and invented concrete since then. That's the first thing. And secondly,
that was what Ray Atkin said. Foot problems started when man invented the wheel. Surfaces to run on. Yeah.
And we used to run barefoot, and we used to have very tight gastrocs. Not we don't now, but we used to have very tight gastrocs, very tight calf muscles, and used to run up on our toes as well. This is 2020, no 10,000 years BC. Concrete's come on since then. And thirdly, if you've been chased by a saber-toothed tiger every day, going out hunting, I've got my bloody toes. So evolution is how we evolve as human beings, and I can't remember who it was that said it's not the strongest of the species that survive. It's not the, what was it now? it's not the strongest of the species that survive. It's the one that's most adaptable to change, right?
Yeah.
Adapting to change every single day.
Because the guys who didn't adapt, they're not here anymore. They're fossils.
They're fossils now. You're going back to the chirodontic thing. Apparently, they looked at skulls from ancient man years ago, looked at teeth alignment, jaw alignment, almost perfect. And they reckon a lot of these issues with dental alignment is due to people's diet, eating habits, even kids sucking dummies and things like that. Has caused changes in the formation of the palate and therefore the bite. So it's been caused by dietary changes and rather than some structural change. That's what they found.
What about? I mean, I do know that there's research being done in terms of cesarean sections compared to natural births and how it compresses the skull and changes the whole sort of like the way things are. You know, and I know, like, you know, kids have been pulled out by a ventouse or whatever, but I definitely think, because they're supposed to come through the birthing channel to squash the head. It's supposed to be part of the natural process. Is that mucking things up because they were just taking them out without going through the birthing channel? I don't know. That's a research from somebody.
It's like the theory put forward years ago as to why, if you see internally rotated limbs, usually the left one is more prevalent, it's more common than the right. That was because when you're lying, your legs are crossed over.
The left one's on the outside and pushes against the wall, and so you get mortality.
It can only go one way, and that's in the way.
Yeah, especially twins.
It's one thing you ask clients. One thing you ask kids, especially of dental problems, you know, ask them about was it a normal birth, full term, etc. Walked and crawled at a certain age? Yes, right. Normal birth, yes. Head presentation, yes. So far, so good, right. Next question, was it a forceps delivery or not? And if you come back and say yes, because forceps delivery, you find that in some kids. Cranial osteopaths will tell you that forceps delivery can distort the sutures of the skull. And lead to problems later on. So it's just a wee thing that you might add on to assessment.
Our oldest, Emer, is now 19. She had a distressed skull fracture. I think when the guy got in to get his hand out, he squeezed it and he popped it. He said he didn't. But anyway, the MRI, there was no shift or anything. And they were talking about drilling a hole and putting a hook in and pulling it out. No, thank you. We went to cranial osteopath. Who worked inside her mouth up in here. Literally, you can just see this coming out. 2 sessions, it was fixed. The guy wanted to drill a hole in her skull and pull it out. Yeah,
I'll send you a link. I'll send you a link in one of the dental sites from chirodontics, and it will show you somebody having their face posture changed by fingers into the mouth and moving the face from one side to the other. It's amazing. You think you couldn't change the shape of the skull, but you can change the shape of the skull. So if you're changing the shape of the skull, you're changing the shape of the brain. And if you're changing the shape of the brain, you're changing its function. So it's pretty big, heavy stuff. Not out with the you and I, but it can be done.
Yeah. Cranial osteopaths, I mean, they're feeling it's a bit
CSF.
They're feeling the CFS, the flow of the fluid. They're not moving the bones. It's pretty amazing stuff. Anybody doesn't know anything about that, who's the name of the chiropractor I work with? Well, you can contact me, or her name will come to me. Oh, it's Erin out in Slane. They're chiropractors. Erin does a lot of pediatrics. Let me see, Clean chiropractor. We used to have a clinic with them. And well, just for people on the call now, if they're in Ireland, they is her name Erin? Anyway, sorry, in Clane, we used to have a clinic shared with them. Meet the chiropractors. Her husband Richard's the husband, and where's their name? It is her. Ellen. Sorry, it's Ellen Finnegan. So Clane Chiropractic sees a lot of kids, a lot of osteopathic treatment for children. Yeah, especially when surgeons want to lock stuff off and realign things. I think, again, back to Ray Anthony, I think he told us one time in a lecture, he saw a kid who was scheduled for bilateral femoral derotation osteotomies. he put, it was like kid was 14. Some lunatic was going to femorally derotate her. Do you remember those little pink things that Ray had for inside shoes? They were like a little pink jelly thing. I can't remember the name of them. They're fantastic. Like a Cobra pad. Anyway, this was back in the mid-90s. Yeah. You put a pair of those in. They got a 4-degree rear foot post. The kid came in like 2 days later. Completely pain was gone. Cancelled the surgery. You know, I mean, love orthopods, but I mean, just have it before you start lopping bits apart.
I know. Find out how it works before you start. Find out how it works before you start chopping bits off it. I tell you what you should do, Justin, in your line of work. Yeah. You should think about organising a multidisciplinary conference with podiatrists, chiropractor, osteopath, physio. Get everybody to stand up and say their piece. Get your Gary Ward there, so you can share information and see where everybody else is coming from. That would be.
Well, that's what I'm sort of trying to do with this thing here, and that may be a good idea, Ramsey. Thanks for that. We may get everybody I've interviewed over the last 10, 12 weeks on in one show and talk about that, because we are organising some biomechanics courses, if we're allowed to get people in a room October time in London and Dublin and Spain. But again, and we are doing some online stuff as part of that, which will probably need to go to all online e-learning, because you can't get people in a room.
No,
but no, that's a good idea. I mean, you'd love Bernard. You didn't see Bernard, my French friend, the ski guy? I mean, he's pretty.
What's his second name?
Chesno.
Yes. I know the name. I've seen his name in the ski stuff. Yeah.
We'll have a look back on my site, or it's on YouTube as well. But Bernard's all about, you don't ski down the mountain, you let the mountain come to you, and it's a whole spiritual experience is the skiing. And but I was fascinated again years ago by alignment and how you can do sport specific biomechanics. I've done sport specific, from skiing to cycling to and obviously all the rehab and stuff with the runners and the triathlons. But no, that's a good idea. We should get everybody on in a few weeks.
I think getting everybody together would be a good idea in terms of conference. When I started the chirodontic thing, the first my exposure to it was, the first day was the chiropractor from the States was there in the clinic with patients. There's a dentist there, 2 orthodontists, a speech therapist, osteopath, a whole variety of professions, right? And when you get in that type of environment and you've met them for the first time, it's like they're all talking different languages. One man's inversions, another man's varus, So at the end of a 2-hour session, I was only beginning to get a handle on the dental side of things after 3 or 4 hours, because they were talking in different patterns. They were talking about, for example, the rear foot movement controls pitch of the body, forefoot movement or position controls torque of the body. So they're all coming from different backgrounds, but at the end of the day, one thing's undeniable: you can't dispute the laws of physics. So if everybody is basing their methodology on physics, it shouldn't be that much different. It really shouldn't. It should be much the same thing. But as we know,
it's the whole mechanical system,
and learning how it works. Yeah.
We've got to learn how it works. Again, I think that's back to, I'm not criticizing the podiatry schools, but certainly the ones that are teaching old style. It's that full body integrated. Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing. Podiatry's given us both a wonderful career right the way through. It's been it's been a fascinating journey along the way. Still not over yet. Fancy doing a ski season. That's what I do. I fancy it. Would never say never treat patients again, but I fancy going to France and working with Bernard and for a couple of months. I've always wanted to let somebody go and ski it, come back and tell you it's shit, and then you get you figured out over a day or two. Well, yeah, because when I worked in London, they used to come back after their holidays about a month later, tell you it was shit. There's nothing you can do there. I think it was Sophie. I think it was Sophie Cox was working. Sophie, I can't remember her name now, married name. She was in Glasgow, or she was in Sligo. She presented about the gait thing, but she was in Whistler for a season or two, and she was using in-shoe pressure and doing them on the slopes.
Did she work with Trevor Pryor? No, Sophie Cox.
I think she may have been working with Trevor Pryor. Let me see. She was. She's now called Sophie something or other else. Hi, Sophie. Oh, there you go. She's in the Gait Lab team. They've got a couple of clinics around. Sophie Roberts.
Roberts, right.
She was Cox. She works with Amanda and Maddie, and they have practices in London. I don't think she's doing very much ski stuff, but she was one of the first people that I've sort of seen. Where are they? Weybridge, in the city, in Chancery Lane, and out in Ashted and Surrey. They keep moving around. But anyway, she was that was back. I was working for Snow and Rock. That was 2000. Sophie had just come. Sophie went to the London Postgraduate Study Group and gave a talk about ski mechanics. And but that had just built on what I think I met Bernard in '96. Yeah, that was fascinating. So season, I fancy a ski season. Help me improve my skiing as well. Anyway, Ramsey, we'll probably wrap up today. We could talk for an awful lot longer, but everybody's probably going to be heading back to lunch.
Yeah.
Back to the grind. I'm going to play tennis if it stops bloody raining. Doesn't look like it's going to.
I'm going to go running my treadmill next door, so that'll be my exercise for the day. So keep myself fit. So I'll do that and then home. So it's been great talking to you again, seeing you again. So keep in touch. And
so how can people get in touch with you, Ramsey? Obviously, just Google Ramsey Sloss Podiatrist Glasgow and it'll come up.
Glasgow Sports Injury Centre or Balanced Physiotherapy Edinburgh. Yeah, that's the two places they can get in touch with me.
Excellent. So, okay. And now you don't go anywhere for a second. I'll finish this. So thanks, everybody. I can't remember who I'm interviewing later on in the week. I don't think anybody. It's going to be quiet enough. We've got too much. But anybody got any suggestions? We have got a couple of other people lined up. But and Ramsey, we'll see again. So cheerio, everybody. Speak soon.
Okay, cheers. Bye.